on this rap-ish. I ain't even broke a sweat, homie, this practice. Pondering my next move, staring at my track list. Hope I ain't missing my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own. Tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues. Guess if you ain't at the table, you on the menu. And I'm that spitter, baby. They don't want you to see, but everybody's south of Capitol Hill's rocking with me. Boys smoke the trays and ponder getting their life together. I'm comfortable with my role, so I'm like, whatever. Me? I ain't got a job, but I work hard. And you don't work hard, but you got a job. The irony is I'm judged while you feel the applause. I'm slept on, that's why I had to set this alarm. My dudes is armed, I'm armed with this arm charm. Body banging like she got that cream from Barry Bonds. Yeah.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
That Dre season is here, a real hitter with a mic, I'm everything that they fear. With that hood ain't the same, I was all on their ass, I'm level-headed. So yo, my dudes love when I spaz, and I'm so over Seattle's passive-aggressive attitude. They don't call you back, what they really saying is F you. While I'm from the same place, I move at a different pace. I prefer if you just said it to my face, damn, I did it.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it
I hate
for
these
us.
average dudes with they average spit, writing average rhymes, knocking average chicks. The closer I get, I can feel the people starting to shift. I'm loyal to a fault, and everybody can't come with. Rap's a rich man's game, I'm only playing with change. They bang models and singers, I'm knocking my own flame, I'm different. The crowd, I move with the chosen few. Black thoughts, I could be the front man for the roots. No diamonds and gold, I'm on my sticks and stones. If we can see your panty line, you should have on a thong. My team is strong, through this fire we forged a bond. And they already know what it is when I get on. To the hearse, party like it's December 31st. When I'm on my deathbed, I probably cracking my nurse. You ain't got the bars to compete, I'm a verbal athlete. Deflating these boys so they say that I cheat. Damn, I did it.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
Yeah. I should probably start by apologizing for the long wait, man. You know, I know I be tripping. But I'm not just a rapper, I'm an artist. And, you know, my creative process is a little bit different than most. Nonetheless, I want to welcome everybody out to the Dre's Experience. I got TCF in the building. My whole camp's here with me. I got the band in here laying this cool-ass vibe. And I'm Seattle's own. Let's get into it.
That's right. Let's get into it. Happy Thursday, y'all. Or y'all know I like to say Friday Eve. Good morning, grand rising to all of you. Welcome to the Morning Update Show. I am your co-host, Trey Holiday. And you guys, we have an amazing show for you as always. I want to send a special shout out to all of you who have been so supportive from us, not just from day one, but beyond. We know that this show reaches to the masses, and we are really happy because you guys are always tagging and sharing the stream, making sure your friends and colleagues know about a place like us right here on the Morning Update Show where they can get culturally responsive news that matters right here in the Emerald City. And so we just thank you all. I'm excited as always to be in studio with my guy, my partner, Big O. What up, Big O?
Hey, holiday.
Happy Thursday.
It's Thursday, man. It's almost Friday. I would tell you already, just in a great mood today. I was at the Mariners game yesterday. Big shout out to Brian Callanan of the Seattle channel. Invited me to the Mariners game. It was a great game. The M's were down. You know, it was looking kind of bleak. They were down 4-1, and then, man, they just powered back. 7 runs in 1 inning. Ended up winning yesterday. And it's always just a great feeling. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. You know the hat wall. We'll show people the hat wall one of these days back there.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to show them the hat wall.
got a bunch of stuff. Hey, want to welcome everybody again here to the Morning Update Show and remind you this is the perfect time right now to tag and share the stream. Go ahead and tag and share the Morning Update Show with people you feel could appreciate culturally relevant news and information emanating from right here in the Emerald City. Got a great show in store for you today. We're going to be talking to Hannah Scott from Cairo FM. Hannah has, like, she's been on this stuff in Olympia and never really sleeps. Maybe me and Hannah
like
got
you,
something
huh?
in common.
Yeah.
But Hannah has been on top of all the stuff coming out of Olympia, and it's been a lot of movement in the last 24, 48 hours down there, so we're going to catch up with Hannah. And then later on in the show, we're going to be talking to a young journalist from Seattle, went to Bush High School down in the Rainier Valley, who's actually attending Arizona State right now, and he did a project on the CHOP. And usually, like, people send a lot of stuff. I'm like, it's a lot of people from out of town, not from Seattle, not from whatever. But, kid from Seattle. And so we're going to let him come on and talk a little bit about his project.
Nice. I love when we can actually give that extending love, to our Seattleites doing great things. And I love a good creative project. So excited to hear about it.
All right, good stuff. Well, something nobody's excited to hear about, but it's something we need to talk about every day here, is the latest news coming out of the Derek Chauvin trial in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And yeah, they keep trying to put George Floyd on trial.
Turning to the Derek Chauvin murder trial, the fired officer's lawyer used body cam video of angry bystanders to try to counter witnesses who testified that he acted outside police policy. As Jamie Yukas reports, the defense also pushed its theory that George Floyd's health problems and drug use caused his death. We warn you, this may be hard to watch.
Derek Chauvin's defense attorney played this clip for James Ryerson, the special agent leading the investigation into George Floyd's death.
Listen to Mr. Floyd's voice. Did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
Did it appear that Mr. Floyd said, "I ate too many drugs"?
Yes, it did.
The prosecution quickly followed up, playing more of the video and re-asking Ryerson what he heard.
I believe so. We found a pipe. We'll get out of the car.
Having heard it in context, you're able to tell what Mr. Floyd is saying there?
Yes, I believe Mr. Floyd was saying, "I ain't do no drugs."
A central argument for Chauvin's defense is that Floyd's death was caused by drug use. The prosecution is not refuting that Floyd took some drugs, but is arguing Chauvin's restraint was still the cause of death. CBS News legal analyst Ricky Kleeman.
The defense says it was his heart condition plus his ingestion of drugs on that day. So the prosecution knows that this is coming, and they better head it off at the pass, which was what they tried to do today.
The defense also came back to one of its central arguments, the effect the crowd had on Chauvin's actions when questioning LAPD Sergeant Jody Steiger.
You are an officer and you're engaged with the suspect, right? And somebody else is now pacing around and watching you and calling you names and saying you're a This could be viewed by a reasonable officer as a threat.
As a potential threat, correct.
The prosecution asked specifically about the crowd that was on the scene that day.
I did not perceive them as being a threat. They were merely filming, and most of it was their concern for Mr. Floyd.
Ricky Kleeman tells us Chauvin's defense team is doing its best to try to create doubt in that one juror who could cause a hung jury. But it's a long way from here to closing arguments. The Hennepin County medical examiner will testify later this week. His office classified George Floyd's death as a homicide, saying he died of cardiac arrest complicated by restraint and neck compression. Tony?
But Jamie, you make the right point. It could come down to one juror. That's all it will take for the defense to get what it's looking for. Thank you very much.
I mean, that right there is our legal system. It could come down to one juror saying that they understand what the defense is putting out there. But again, I mean, as we keep on saying it, George Floyd is not on trial here. Oh, and clearly there they are again, trying to make it seem like he said something that would indicate that he had taken too many drugs. I love how they were then able to say, actually, it sounds like he said, "I ain't take no drugs." I mean, here we are, man. This is, again, pulling at straws. Oh,
yeah, they've continuously tried to put George Floyd on trial, and have continuously tried to dehumanize him. That's the defense strategy. The defense is going to come with a defense. But like I said, it's not so surprising to me to see the defense try to come with things, but there's a lot of people in America that are on that bandwagon. You know what I'm saying? They really feel that way. They really, it's all about George Floyd was a drug addict. He was this and that and everything else. And it's like everything killed George Floyd except for Chauvin.
Well, this is where that medical piece comes in, and it becomes so key to all of this when we're talking about the fact that clearly he died heart complications because of the knee on the neck. And so again, I don't know what the defense is going to be able to do to try to refute that. They've already said that they try to come out and say it had nothing to do with, the knee being on the neck for as long as it was. But now there's evidence to showcase the difference. Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, there was a crowd of bystanders and everything else. And they felt threatened. I mean, this is something we heard that here. That's what he said. They felt threatened, at least tear gas. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I mean, was that really threatened? That's a low threshold. You know what I'm saying? After, especially like if you be out there, that's a low threshold. People sitting there yelling with their cell phones out is a real low threshold. But they grasping their straws. And again, we'll stay on top of this. But it's the trial. One thing I will say, it's moving along.
It is.
It's it's definitely moving along. And we're gonna have a verdict here soon enough. Up next, we're gonna take a quick merch break. But up next, who we got? We've got Hannah. Hannah is coming to talk about what's going on down in Olympia. That was a handcrafted motion graphic there, by the way, Hannah. Just so you know, it's handcrafted, my friend. We're gonna take a quick merch break. When we come back, we're talking to Hannah Scott. You're watching Morning Update Show. So I'm gonna let you guys see these guys. They capping on my handcrafted motion graphics. Like, it isn't like you used a glue stick.
Handcrafted
or some
motion
scissors.
graphics. It's so serious.
Well, all right. I'm gonna switch it up. I'm gonna just say that it was made with love, care, and attention. Does that sound better?
I don't mind it, man. Handcrafted motion graphics. By the way, just so y'all know, there's real love putting in those motion graphics.
There's AI and stuff these days. It could be computer. I go through there and I have to spell check it like 4 times.
You make sure it's sliding right, everything.
Yeah, it's going out on Twitter. And worst thing you can do is have somebody's name wrong on there.
Exactly.
Oh man, it's tripping.
All love.
D. Alessandro. Please bring in Hannah Scott from Cairo FM Radio.
Yeah.
Hi, Hannah.
Hey, guys.
Hannah.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Morning Update Show.
Always happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
And before we get started, I should acknowledge this, that Hannah, I get up early. Hannah, I don't think Hannah even sleeps, but Hannah, what time do you get up for the show there on Cairo? 3:30.
Oh, that's that news cycle.
Yeah, no, it's Hannah and Dave Ross. And before we jump into this, though, Hannah, I really wanted to tell you thank you to you and Dave Ross and Cairo FM, man, for a few things. The last time we were talked over there, you guys really uplifted the 1-year anniversary of the Morning Update Show, allowed us come on air, a great article and everything else. But something else that Cairo FM has done continuously now for almost 1 year is every time we wanted to come on there and talk about gun violence disruption in our neighborhood and talk about how we're impacted and things going on, you guys always let us come on air to talk about gun violence disruption. I want to acknowledge that.
Absolutely. It's always our pleasure. And it's how it's an important issue, something that you and I have discussed before. There's a lot of promises made all the time, and it doesn't seem like anything ever gets done. So the more that we can shine a light on that, the better.
Awesome.
Okay, so let us know what's going on, and it's a lot going on. We blocked a lot of time for today because we didn't want to shortchange the conversation. So tell us what's happening down there in Olympia. I'll let you start, whether it's public safety or policing or some of these other things.
There's so many things that are going on. So I'm going to start off with a bill that passed a couple of days ago. Now, most of these have passed both the House and the Senate, but because there's a couple of amendments that have happened, they'll have to go back for what's called a concurrence vote. For the most part, pretty much a formality at this point. They should end up in front of the governor. The one that's really big is I think you've talked to Representative Jesse Johnson from Federal Way, who he had a couple of the bills that were under this umbrella of the police accountability effort. One big one, and it goes so well with the George Floyd trial that you were just talking about, is a police tactics bill. It's 1054, and it passed 2 days ago, I believe it was. It bans chokeholds. It bans neck restraints. It bans no-knock warrants. It also severely limits the use of tear gas, the buying of military equipment for police departments, and a few other things. But it really makes a significant difference. And this is a statewide mandate that will happen.
Wow.
So when just real quick, so when you're using the word pass, you're saying that it passed both houses and it now goes to Governor Inslee for signature?
It passed, so it originally passed the House, then passed the Senate a couple days ago, but the Senate had a couple of technical amendments. So the House has to technically go ahead and vote on it again, but that should be fine.
How big of a margin or how thin of a margin did this pass through these houses?
This was a pretty party line vote, the tactics bill. There was some Republican support, though. And in fact, on this particular bill, the Washington Fraternal Order of Police did come on board with this. In fact, I had talked to them maybe a month or so ago, and they really praised Representative Johnson for the bill went a little bit further. Back in the beginning, it ended up having something about canines in there, officers in their canine units that were going to be banned for use in chasing down suspects. And then there was a lot of pushback on that because something about the dogs have to, in order to identify someone, they have to be able to use their nose and get a certain amount of distance. So there's I think a work group or something else for a year, and then they'll report back to the legislature and just put a little more thought into what that's going to actually look like. So that's still coming, just not in this bill. But they praised Representative Johnson for being willing to compromise. Not all the police groups were on it. I think Association of Chiefs and Sheriffs were not on board, and some others, but you had a large quantity of them and some Republican support. So it was a really big victory, I think. Historic, I think, is what Representative Johnson told me yesterday when I talked to him. And beyond that, it makes a very, very legitimate difference in what policing will look like.
Well, I don't know if we've gone this far down the road with this particular piece of legislation. I know Triana has a question for you about it as well. But if the governor signed this into law, let's say tomorrow, and it took into effect, like, let's say May 1st or June 1st, it seems, at least my understanding here in the city of Seattle, that it still wouldn't take effect in Seattle because any change of tactics or use of tactics or anything else has to go through the federal consent decree. So even though the state law might say you can't use this tear gas, you can't use this tactic, unless it's approved through the monitor and through the consent decree, the SPD can't make a change to their tactics and policy, right?
That is absolutely correct until they're out from underneath that consent decree. And I think I think Seattle is still working with the new monitor right now on their own, what they're going to do with their crowd control ordinance themselves. So it will not be that much difference. This, by the way, though, would not take effect until, I believe, January 1st is when this would take effect. So you have to train everybody. You can't just, flip a switch and make this happen overnight. There's going to have to be some trainings and things involved. But it would be coming, and it would be coming relatively soon.
Wow, Hannah. I mean, that's great. And, as a resident of Federal Way, I just got to say, shout out to Jesse Johnson for, having the foresight. And my question to you is clearly, as you were just describing there, it takes a lot of support, from an all around perspective. What do you have to do in order to even get to that point? I know you've been following this along the path, and I just wondered, it feels like Jesse Johnson and his administration has had to make sure that they were touching a lot of different people in order to get this bill to have such a great passing, as you said.
Right. And it's about communication and being willing to listen when you're in those table sit downs and you have these conversations, because if you are not willing to give, then the bill's not going to end up passing. You're going to, I apologize if I have somebody leaving from where I'm at. But you have to be able to listen, hear the other side, and move. You can't be immovable, not on a bill like this, not on a conversation like this, because there's too much at stake, too many different points of view. So really big accolades to all sides who got to the middle on this, and those that didn't. I think Fraternal Order of Police told me, specific to neck restraints, they were very glad to see that ban. They said one wrong move, if you're not properly trained on that tactic, somebody ends up dead, and they don't want that, right, as officers. So really just listening, and a lot like we saw with I-940 to some degree.
What are the chances that once signed that this goes to court? That you know there's some kind of legal objections from maybe different police organizations, community groups, public safety advocates around this law?
I don't think that we'll see that on this bill. I think it's been really, really well worked, and it's the legislature. They have their attorney, their legal people who look at this, and I would be surprised to see that. I've not heard any rumblings about it. If that happens, it's not like there's bills that pass that, there's not a lawsuit over. In fact, I think there's a couple in a different area that we'll definitely see lawsuits over as far as taxes go this year. But that generally they can continue to do whatever it is they're going to do unless you get an injunction from a judge that blocks it from taking effect.
Wow, that's actually really great to hear. We don't need too much back and forth, I'm sure. Hannah, what other bills and legislation has been kind of passing, or tell us more about other things that are going on down there in Olympia?
I have another one that's great that, again, speaks to the George Floyd incident. This is the duty to intervene bill. This is from Senator Moncadingra over in Bellevue. It, again, passed both chambers just a couple of days ago. And it's simple. It requires an officer who sees or who witnesses another officer engaging in what they think is use or excessive force to intervene. They have to they have to go and they have to do something. So in the case of George Floyd, those other officers standing around would have been required by law, not just by department policy, but by law, to go and intervene. They also would have to, for any kind of wrongdoing that they witness that's below a use of force situation, they would have to go and report that to the supervisor, or because this can be outside their own agency, so just the agency of the other officer too.
Right. What I saw a passage of a bill where there's a state legislator who was actually in prison, got out of prison, she became a lawyer, and now passed a bill for restoration of voting rights.
Yes, in fact, and the governor signed that yesterday. So this one is a done deal. And there's, sorry guys, dog. Stop. This had already been, I'm so sorry.
Oh, don't worry, we get dogs, we get crying babies. This is a morning update show. Don't worry about it.
All good.
That happens. So they're already, anyone who was considered a felon, they could get their voting rights back, but they had to wait till they were done serving community custody if they were on community custody. And there was kind of hoops they had to jump. This eliminates that. Now you automatically get your voting rights back the minute that you're out of prison for 24 hours. And this is for your total confinement. So it's somebody who's in prison for, every day, all the time. Once they're out for a full day, they automatically get their voting rights back. It doesn't matter if they're on community custody, they can still have their voting rights back. And this was considered a huge win. And this was Tara Simmons, who did serve time, and she just got elected this last year. And she's making quite a bit of noise in the legislature.
Yeah, she's from Kitsap County, right?
Mm-hmm, I believe
representing a district in Kitsap.
Wow.
Hey, so it's just an observation here, right? Because in our state, it's a little bit different but based on population. So we hear that and we're like, oh man, you know what? People in prison can come home. But, we fail to remember that the majority of people in prison in the state are white. You know what I'm saying? It's and so like a lot of these things, and we have our own lens here, which we're supposed to, and Converge in the community that we represent, is that based just on the numbers, these bills that are passing are there to protect, you know, all citizens of the state of Washington, but the majority of the citizens of the state are white people.
Yeah, sure.
So it's safer policing for them. It's more white people can get out of prison and vote and some of everything else. Because, you know, a lot of times people look at these things like, you know, black people in jail, whatever, and they inflate the numbers in their heads.
Yeah.
The majority of people in this state that are in DOC are white people. And so those voting rights will be restored within 24 hours.
Wow, that's awesome. And it sounds like there's a lot of great historic wins. I mean, Hannah, you've been covering so many things. Is there anything else our audience needs to know about?
Yes, absolutely. There's a couple of big ones that I want to point out. Arbitration when an officer has been disciplined is such a big issue. We've heard Mayor Jenny Durkin talk about it before the session started. She called for state overhaul on that system. And there was a bill that would have done away with the ability for officers to use arbitration to get a firing reversed, like we saw with Adlai Shepard and other officers. That bill died, but a second bill did pass. And it basically covers the selection process of a arbitration or the arbiters. So the one agency will pick out 9 to 18 different arbiters, and they will work on a rotating basis. It really is an effort to speak to, you hear about accusations of favoritism, or somebody's got an arbiter kind of in their pocket that is making a decision to give an officer their job back because of something kind of shady. This is an effort to do away with that, and a first step in arbitration reform for those kinds of issues. So that was a very big deal. And I have one more huge one I want to tell you about if you have any questions about the first one I just said.
Well, I just want to throw this in here real quick. Do you think, or maybe you have some reporting, what we were hearing is around this arbitration bill, although there was a lot of people in public, citizens, and also elected officials. You saw that day that for the testimony there, I think you saw Mayor Durkin, the mayor of Tacoma, some city council members, and even people who represent police organizations were for this. But the labor unions were against it. And the labor unions are really who get a lot of these legislators elected. And do you think that the labor unions let their voice and intention be heard down there in Olympia, and that impacted this bill, and this bill went to go die?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the sponsor of that bill was Jesse Salmon, senator, and he flat out told me, I interviewed him after that first hearing where Mayor Durkin and Lisa Herbold and I think Mayor Woodard from Tacoma was down there. And he said the only way this is going to pass is if we get the word out about it and there is enough public pressure to beat the unions, essentially. And there was absolutely significant pushback, because it's not just police so the situation with the arbiters is in the Seattle police contract, for instance. The Seattle Police Department, and I think it's this way for all of them, they agree to have arbitration to settle these disputes, or they agree not to strike in order to get this arbitration decision or process in their disciplinary hearings. So if they take that out of the contract when there's actually a contract, it puts all contracts at risk in the state, and it's a big union state.
Right. It's also interesting too. We got to go back and look and see which unions voted to kick SPOG out of the King County Labor Council, and how many of those same unions that kicked SPOG out were the same ones that were applying pressure to kill this arbitration bill. What else do you have for us, Hannah?
One more big one. This is the Senator Jamie Peterson's 5051. It's got a long title. We call it the desert bill, the decertification bill. This was described to me before session as the teeth of the entire police accountability agenda that's going through session right now. Decertification, if you're not familiar, is like a doctor or a nurse they lose their license if they behave badly at work, or if they're not, they do something wrong at their work that puts a life at risk or something like that. Same thing with the cops. There's always been this process where you can remove the ability of an officer to be an officer in this state if they behave badly. It just never happens like prosecutions. I think maybe a handful of times, maybe a dozen or so. It's happened very, very rarely. This lays out a whole much stricter decertification process, as well as extensive background checks when you're hiring officers. And I don't know if I can't remember if we've talked about this. There's another process that goes on where an officer probably, and they're starting an internal investigation, or they're already in the appeals process, whatever it might be. If that officer realizes that, you know what, it's not going to go right for them, they can quit that job. And what has been happening, because there's no communication across the state between the agencies and no database of officers who get busted for misconduct of any kind. So they can just go to Seattle and you see it's gonna go wrong for you. You quit, you go to Everett, you quit, you go to, whatever other agency, and they hire you because they don't know. So now there's a database that's going to be started so that can't happen. And then these really extensive background checks in this bill. And then that decertification process that now used to be just for excessive use of force, that you would be just decertified immediately. That would still be the case under this, but it also creates a new tiered system of kind of a point system if you behave badly, but in a lesser way. So that if you accumulate enough points, then you will still be decertified. But there's suspensions and a lot of other things that are part of that. And that is handled by the Criminal Justice Training Commission, which has always been the case. But it used to be law enforcement heavy team on that, the panel that was the commission. Now it is going to be more civilian heavy.
Well, I think that this is really intriguing. And when I think about what normal folks have to go through just to get a job, right? If I steal from my last employer, right, and I try to go to another employer and say, oh, I've never been, charged or never been in any theft kind of things, they can pull that up just based on background checks. So this is really essentially extending that same kind of system to the police departments throughout the state and being able to centralize a lot of that data. What's the status of this right now?
5051's passed both chambers, and it will need to go back because there was a couple of amendments, but they were fairly technical, and I don't see it. I think it ends up I think all of these will end up at the governor's desk.
Wow.
Right. And all indications. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to let you know there's two more big ones that we're waiting for. They should come up today or tomorrow, and that is the defining what use of force is acceptable. So making it very, very clear that use of force, deadly force is the last resort. And then the key one is the independent investigation bill that is also expected to come up today or tomorrow.
Wow.
A lot going on down there in Olympia. Man, really appreciate you taking the time this morning, Hannah, to keep us up to date. Hannah sent me like all these links to all these bills. Like early this morning, I woke up to them and I was like, I'll never make it. I say, maybe you could just come on here and explain everything to our viewers. So, man, we really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And if it's okay with you, maybe we can check back in with you probably next week and see the status of these other bills that you mentioned.
Absolutely. There's going to be passing bills all through Sunday. There's going to be floor action, and I'll, because there's a big cutoff. So I'll know everything you need to know come Monday.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Hannah.
You bet, guys. Have a great one.
Yo,
wow.
So Hannah stays on it.
Yeah, I mean, really, what she just did there too was break down that police package that Paula Sardinas was on here talking about some weeks ago, and telling people, look, you guys need to do what you can to help pass this full-on police package. There's a lot of details in there. Oh, right,
and actually, Paula Sardinas is supposed to join us tomorrow. They'll reconfirm. We spoke earlier in the week. So we'll talk to Paula Sardinas. I mean, why this is important too, especially people who followed this almost 1 year of historic change here in Seattle, was a lot of the things that people were talking about they wanted changed, they wanted to see differently. Very few of those things can happen on the city level. The majority of them happen on the state level. And that's why what's happening in Olympia is very important. And it's important that people are watching and everything else. I mean, you can actually see this timeline from the streets to city council, now down to the legislature, and very soon here to Governor Jay Inslee's desk. So.
Yeah, here we go. And the thing that I love about this is we were talking about this. We were telling people, take your stake back, take your claim back into your city, into your state. And we're seeing people utilize their voices, man, and getting engaged. So many different digital campaigns where folks are sending emails to their legislators, to their state reps, to make sure that their voices are counted, as a lot of these measures are happening down there in Olympia. So it's really a great day, because I think we've needed this level of civic engagement. And we're seeing it play out.
There it is. We're going to take a break right now. When we come back, Big O loves the kids. we got Ike Everard. Well, look at that. He sent over a great photo too. That's not handcrafted anymore. That was just built with a lot of love and care, right? It's not arts and crafts. Graham brought over like, man, you talking like it's arts and crafts, dog. Did you glue the macaroni on the paper? So Ike is a journalism student from Seattle, from the Rainier Valley, and he's down at Arizona State, and he put together a project down there about the CHOP when he was here in Seattle. So we're going to talk to him about that. You're watching the Morning Update Show.
Public Health, Seattle, King County, Zero Youth Detention, along with our partners from across the South King County region, are committed to reducing violence and creating the conditions needed for our neighborhoods to be safe and free of crime. Too often, the response to crime and violence has been a piecemeal approach with a program here and a program there. When family units collapse, schools fail to educate, the economy fails to produce jobs, and crime rises, we've looked to law enforcement and punitive measures to save us. Nothing could be more wrong or further from the truth. Law enforcement can't shoulder all the burden or take the rest of us off the hook. We are acknowledging the lived experiences of Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities. We are centering community as the experts who can effectively identify key issues related to systems, policies, and practices that impact children, families, and communities of color across this region. Those most impacted by the issues will help call out and identify the root causes, including structural and systemic factors. 150 residents will partner with King County to develop strategies, solutions, and an action plan that explicitly addresses system changes needed and eliminates barriers to access for Black, Brown, and Indigenous folks. These residents will also identify the criteria used to measure our collective success. Simply put, we need your help as we do the work needed to make King County the safest in this country. It will take specific commitments from all of us, community members, our young people, elders, and leaders from the sectors all across this region. Together, we will get this work done. Please click the link below and sign up for a work group. Or you can recommend a co-facilitator from community for each work group. We look forward to hearing your ideas, concerns, feedback, and solutions as we build a community where all our children can be happy, healthy, hopeful, safe, and thriving.
All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. My name is Omari Salisbury.
And I am Trey Holiday.
Ray Holiday. Hey. All right. So, man, I got contacted by this young man, Ike Everard. He made a project down there for school at Arizona State. And usually people, we get hit with so much stuff about protests and this and that and everything else. And it's like, yeah. But I talked to Ike, and man, he went to from Seattle, went to school down there in the Rainier Valley off Martin Luther King and Madison at Bush High School. Now he's down in nice, sunny Arizona State, and worked on this project. He said he went down there to school, and people had a whole different concept of what happened this summer. And man, he decided to make a multimedia project. Oh yeah, D'Alessandro, please bring in Ike Everard.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Ike.
Yeah. You look like you chilling in Arizona.
Definitely. It just broke 90, so.
Of course.
Look at we gonna have to disconnect the transmission on you. All right, Ike. This is a very rare occasion, young man, because it's a lot of this stuff with protests and everything. It's real overwhelming for us. But we had some real good conversations that led up to this interview here. And before we play this short clip that we have around some of the interviews that you did, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what motivated you to want to tell what you saw a story around CHOP to your colleagues there at Arizona State University.
Yeah, so when I got down here to Arizona State in the fall, after being home all summer and seeing everything that was going on with CHOP and the protests, I got back and everyone was looking at me. They were like, "Oh, like you're from Seattle? Isn't that like where that war zone was? Like, are you okay? Did you leave?" And I was just sitting there. I was like, "That's not at all what I saw. That's not how it was." And so that really inspired me to like go in when I went home for winter break and try to tell this story and try to give the real people a platform, people who were there, people who organized it and saw what was actually happening, and try to, because we've seen all the media coverage and, the narrative that gets spun. So really try to expose, the truth behind what happened.
Right. But before we play this clip here, this was, and there's another reason why I brought you on here, because, so many people were making stuff to sell.
Yeah.
Like, I want to sell this, want to sell this, want to sell that. This was something you did part and parcel there with Arizona State?
Yeah. So this was through a program where they just want students to create multimedia projects for the school, for basically just for practice and so that they can, kind of grow their esteem, I guess. But really it was me using them to get equipment and get, a platform to build this on and have the resources that I needed to go out and tell what I thought was a very important story.
I'm not mad at that approach.
Just use what you can, do what you can with what you have, right?
All the time.
All right, we're going to play this short clip right here real quick. We'll talk about it on the other side.
A lot of people, they see the aftermath, but they don't realize it was born from 10 plus straight days of protests right in your face, day in and day out. I myself were out there 6 straight days before the police left and some sort of chop came in.
A lot of us who were there and had a totally different experience than what was shared publicly, and it's like crazy, the stuff that was going on that nobody heard about.
And now you can tell, who all did you talk to? I think we saw martial law right there from the martial law van, and then we saw They Call Me Nas, right? Who else did you speak to while you were up there?
I spoke to Dustin Adams. I spoke to Dan Gregory, Diana Adams, who owns Vermilion. I spoke to Jason Longinus, who's a business owner on Capitol Hill. I spoke to some more people who wanted to be off the record because of threats and things like that. But those are the main people who I spoke to in the whole project.
And, my question for you is, doing this project and being there and again, being able to have that perspective of going back to school and people being like, oh my gosh, are you okay? What did you walk away with in terms of your own understanding of what took place during the chop zone or chat zone? What did you really kind of take away from all of this?
I think it's important to remember, because what I took away is it wasn't roses in the park every day. Some people would have you believe it. There was struggle, there was drama, there was controversy, but at the same time, it was not, an all-out, unregulated, militarized zone that certain media outlets were reporting it to be. So I think my takeaway with it was that it was really in the middle, but it was really a positive building block for the kind of change that, people are trying to see in the communities. And so I think that what my takeaway was just how positive it was and how much it brought people together and how I was so blown away by that.
Right. And now we've put the link to the website there in the comments so people can click on there. One last question for you here. What interview or who did you talk to, or what interview or what was said that most impacted you or was most transformational in your discussions?
I think the most transformational one for me, was Marshall, because Marshall talks just so well about everything going on, and he has such a great perspective, being down there playing music and really being a unique voice in the protests. But the other one that really changed my perspective quite a bit was They Call Me Nas. She just spoke so much about the struggles that she and her family have faced, especially in the education system, and I was just kind of struck by that because I hadn't heard too much about that before.
Wow.
All right.
Great
All
work.
right. Ike Everard, journalism student, 21 down there at Arizona State University,
basking in the sunlight,
where it's 90 degrees. Check this out, man. When you get back here to Seattle on the next break, make sure and hit us up, and we'll have you down here to the studio, okay?
Absolutely. I love that.
All right. Have a good day, Ike.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Yeah.
It's great because it sounds like he really got a wide range of perspectives. You know what I mean? And we know that there was a wide range of perspectives out there.
And it's something about this young man's approach or whatever, because people don't typically like to talk about this stuff. Not that people are just tight-lipped, but a lot of people, you don't really want to relive a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
He talked to quite a few key people. He talked to Dan. Dan's the guy who got shot. Remember when the guy ran the car over there into the crowd and he went to try to pull him out the car and then got shot? So he talked to Dan. Like I said, Marshall, Nas, talked to business owners and some everything else. So like I said, the link is there in the comments, and so we'll check that out. Yeah. We're going to take a quick break right now. When we come back, we've got another clip from an interview with Deputy Mayor Tiffany Washington. You're watching the Morning Update Show.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
Back on this rap ish, I ain't even broke a sweat, homie, this practice. Pondering my next move, staring at my track list, hope I ain't missing my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own, tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.
All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. My name is Omari Salisbury.
I am Trey Holiday. Sorry, looking at Jake over there getting his bicep and triceps on. Sorry, that's great. Great, thanks, Jake.
What is that called? Oh man.
He's like, raw.
Well, not to digress, but Jake brings up something real interesting. Remember, he said shooting in the gym.
Yeah.
And what did we used to say? We'd be like, this is just a mixtape. Wait for the album. I bring this up, right? So it was like, this was 2 years ago. We'd be in the studio with Trey Holiday and Eric Calligraphy, and we'd be doing a lot of community interviews. And, nothing was ever perfect. It was very difficult to edit. We didn't have any kind of like the equipment that we have now. Yeah. We were borrowing lights. We were borrowing this and that, borrowing lenses. And we used to always say, it's like, yo, we just shooting in the gym right now. Just wait. We got to be ready for when we get called up to the league.
That's
we're just
right.
shooting in the gym. Okay? People like, oh, it's not perfect. Don't worry. We're just shooting it. We're just working on the mixtape right now. Don't worry. We're going to drop the album, right?
That's right.
That was everyday conversation because people would get discouraged in the studio. Be like, don't worry. This is just the mixtape. We're going to come with the album. One of these days, we're going to drop the album.
Right.
One of these days, we're going to stop shooting in the gym and be on the court.
Man, we were going from that camera phone collective, baby, man. Moving over into, actual cameras, man, getting our DSLRs, man. It was all really, really, you guys, humble beginnings.
Yeah, tell people, man, if you shooting in the gym, keep shooting.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? You just never know when you're going to get that call. And, it's that practice just really makes perfect.
It does. It really does.
I feel like we in the gym right now. We just in a bigger gym.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We put out the first album now, but now we back on our mixtapes. You know what I'm saying? We gotta keep getting better every day.
That's right.
Speaking of getting better, we're getting better with our programming. And we have a new show that's launching this Sunday at 7 p.m. It's called The District. And the whole breakdown with The District is we want to be able to hold elected officials and appointed officials that represent District 2 and District 3 accountable. We want to be able to ask them, what are you doing? What happened this week? What's going on? And so, of course, that's city council. With city council, we say 2 and 3, but also King County Council, school board, any elected official or an appointed official who, like a director, who of course has who's over District 2 and District 3 as well. So inaugural episode is this Sunday at 7 p.m. And it's with Deputy Mayor Tiffany Washington. You guys saw a clip yesterday when Deputy Mayor Washington talked about defund and some everything else. And this clip right here is when we're talking about what's going on right now in our community, the impact of gun violence. But it's a silent epidemic or pandemic in our community, which is this issue of gun violence, and especially youth gun violence.
I think that I definitely am traumatized. I, to this day, don't go to funerals because it just reminds me of my brother's passing, which was very tragic, and the impacts that it had on his children and my nephew, his son, who actually had the chance to meet him and experience losing his dad. I won't even know people, and I'm traumatized every time there's a shooting in our community at large. In Chicago, in Seattle, it just impacts me. No body should have to bury their children, and no one should have to, like, just even remembering my mom's reaction is just it's a terrible thing. And so I think that it's been criminalized, right? It's thugs, it's gang violence. We need to arrest, or we have to, find the perpetrator. And I remember at my brother's funeral, the pastor said, "We lost 2 Black men today, one to prison and one to the grave." And I think dealing with it through a public health lens is essential, because we can't arrest ourselves out of this. And there needs to be some acceptance that, like, there's a reason why there's a reason why there's gun violence, and we didn't do it to ourselves.
Deputy Mayor Tiffany Washington right there.
Man, I just really appreciate her in-depth perspective. I mean, when we talk about people bringing their lived experience to bear with regard to how we can see change, how we can make change, actualize change, I just appreciate her being very candid there. I mean, honestly, I've seen too many people. I know of too many people that have died because of gun violence. And we talk about it all the time. When we hear about these things happening in our community, it's normally a stone's throw away from somebody we know, we love, we grew up with. Our community is small here. And so, I really appreciate, her perspective and her insight talking about gun violence. And for me, I think about the countless amounts of people that I know, that my brothers know, that have lost their lives to gun violence. And it really is such an issue that permeates, our community. I'm glad that you were able to ask her about that in this upcoming episode of The District.
Yeah, I think what people are going to take away from the interview with Deputy Mayor Washington is that she doesn't shy away from the issues. I mean, it's refreshing. I mean, she's appointed and not elected, and so, elected officials are always more cautious, I think you'd say, with their words. But still, a deputy mayor is a pretty high position to be in any city. But Deputy Mayor Washington didn't shy away from things. We also talked to her about the events this summer. We talked to her about the budgeting. Participatory. Brain freeze here. That's that 2 hours of sleep I've been getting. Participatory budgeting. We talk about that, and also her lived experience as well. And so, I think it's a well-rounded interview and everything else. And it's also a pretty good interview for our first episode. Have the deputy mayor of the city on our first episode of The District. And so, we'll be reaching out to all these people that represent or are accountable for District 2 and District 3 over the coming weeks, so we can continue to discuss with them about things that impact the districts.
Yeah, you know what? I love that. It's a great, another great showing of Converge as we grow all of these amazing shows and really giving the audience a wide range of perspectives to understand. One of the things we talk about here all the time is, hey, even if we don't agree, we can try to find ways to understand it. You say that often. And I think that the shows are also showcasing that, whether it is Rewind with Besa and you're talking about pop culture or clapback culture, Culture, you know, with Julia Jesse and Mike Davis. I mean, or the Morning Update show where we are trying to keep it as, you know, news worthy as possible while also being authentically ourselves. So I just love the way that our shows are growing. Oh.
I love them too. And you mentioned one of them right there, which is Clapback Culture. And I would say handcrafted, but it was made with love. It was uploaded with love here. We got an overlay. Tonight, 7 o'clock, it's Julia Jesse and Mike Davis for Clapback Culture. And they're keeping up with the Derek Chauvin trial. They're talking about Paul Pierce. You see Paul Pierce? Oh man. we'll leave that one alone right now. But Paul Pierce got fired for doing way too much. They're also going to be talking about Biden and his infrastructure plan and some everything. So that's 7 o'clock tonight, right here. Anywhere you're watching the Morning Update show, you can catch Clapback Culture. Any last words before we get out of here?
Man, you know, this has been such a great day, you guys. I'm seeing the sun peek through there. I always want to just take this opportunity to remind you all to see yourself as a part of the solution. Clearly, there's a wide range of ways to do so. And as you see yourself, you also inject yourself into the whole equation of choices and change.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. Well, tonight, 7 o'clock, Clapback Culture. So make sure and check that out. And as usual, want to remind everybody, go forward in your purpose, go forward in your humanity. And until tomorrow at 11 a.m., peace.
Lift every voice and sing till earth in heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day.